तो आज हमने सोचा कि इवनिंग में वॉक करनी चाहिए, तो इवनिंग वॉक के लिए आए हैं। सूरज हमारे पीछे है और बड़ा नाइस किस्म का दिन था आज। सुबह हल्का फुल्की ठंड थी और सारा दिन टेम्परेचर 23 से ऊपर शायद नहीं गया, और अभी भी 21-22 ही है और थोड़ा सा विंडी है। मैंने अभी तकरीबन 1.5 माइल की जॉग की है और उसके बाद दरिया के किनारे आके थोड़ी वॉक शुरू कर दी है। लोग शाम के वक्त घरों को वापस जा रहे हैं अपनी बोट्स में। सामने से एक बीबी आ रही है। ये रेडिंग फेस्टिवल की कुछ तैयारियां शुरू हैं। कुछ आपको पोल्स और फ्लैग्स वगैरह लगे हुए नज़र आ रहे होंगे। ये बेसिकली ये छोटे छोटे लिविंग एरियाज़ बनाते हैं ये फेस्टिवल गोअर्स के लिए। तो ये अभी तकरीबन 2 हफ्ते में यहाँ पे फेस्टिवल स्टार्ट हो जाएगा, तो उससे पहले प्रिपरेशन मुकम्मल कर लेंगे। प्रॉबेबली नेक्स्ट वीक में किसी टाइम में जब मैं यहाँ से गुजरूँगा तो इट्स वेरी लाइकली कि यहाँ पे एक टेम्पररी वॉल बनाई हुई हो उस वक्त तक।
What about meal wrappers? Like, I mean, not one.
ये रिवर के अपोजिट साइड पे कैवशम है सारा। ये काफ़ी पॉश किस्म का इलाका है, बहुत एक्सपेंसिव प्रॉपर्टीज़ हैं उस एंड पे। वैसे भी शायद दरिया के किनारे होने की वजह से वैसे भी प्रॉपर्टीज़ वैल्यू मज़ीद बढ़ाती हैं। तो इनकी अपनी बोट्स के लिए भी स्पेसेस बनी हुई हैं, बाकायदा गैराज टाइप की चीज़ें बनी हुई हैं। तो ये हमारी थेम्स नदी है। Back home you find canals of this width, but here it's a river, and it mostly remains on average similar kind of a size. It doesn't go too wide. At some, I think certain points it can go really narrow as well, but most of the time it's kind of this similar width that it has got at the moment. So this is a usual walkers and picnic spot for people. You can see another boat going back to its destination. Probably would have been somewhere closer to London maybe. It's coming back from that side. Again, you can see some temporary walls being created here. As I mentioned, the Reading Festival is not very far now, so they've already started putting things in place for the festival. And this beauty of the river and the just simple nature just pulls you here for regular jogs and walks. And the weather being nice is a bonus. These are very dangerous bikes. Just electric kind of bicycles. A friend contacted this morning to check on how things have been this weekend, because there's a lot going on in most parts, not most, but some parts of England and a couple of areas in Northern Ireland as well. So it's mainly been the problems generally created by the far right. They are not happy that there are too many immigrants in here. Although the area that I'm live from at the moment is a very nice multicultural town, and you can actually find almost all different nationalities around here. But the good thing is it's quite it's a bigger kind of a younger population, so you can say that most of the population would be working class, so the taxpayer. So it has been a little bit tricky over the last few days because of some poor innocent kids got killed by a 17-year-old who again was born and brought up here but was a son of immigrants. So that has been one of the reasons why things have got a bit sketchy. But what those people who have been just coming out on the streets and causing some damage to property as well, it sounds like they don't really look deep enough into things and they just decide to cause damage. So initial thought was that the boy that had killed the kids and injured a few as well was a Muslim, because it has been something which I think over the last couple of decades has been just labeled, every time labeled on Muslims, that if some sort of thing happens anywhere in the world or anywhere in the Western world, it's just without even looking a little bit deeper into it, it's just labeled as a terrorist attack or those kind of things, which is a bit unfair, I would say, to a religion, basically, because these different attitudes, different aptitudes, different kind of activities that people do, they don't really define any religion. If one has to just look at religions, you would find all different types of people being part of religions. So, well, funny enough that ultimately um, the boy that was named at the end of this whole scenario, um, his name was, it sounded more like a Christian name, but because far right had already decided that they're going to cause damage, so they have been going to the areas of Muslim population or where the worship places are, just trying to cause damage. Lucky enough that there's enough police around, so they've been kind of kept from causing too much damage, although they've still managed to, burn a vehicle here or there, burn some kind of a store if it belonged to some immigrant. What these people don't understand is that a lot of people who've come to this country have come from the regions of the world which were, if you go back by 80 to 100 years, mostly those areas were ruled by the British. So one can raise the question, what were the British doing there? Now, if they have been doing whatever they have been doing there, they have left one thing over there, which was language. So it automatically becomes far more easier for people to just come to this country because they can speak English. And then they look at the best possibilities for them to have a better life as well. So it becomes an automatic choice. Although Britain is not that very, thriving kind of economy anymore, it has just been on decline for the last few decades, and especially in the last decade or so, things have gone down quite significantly, especially in the last 4 or 5 years when they have, last 8 years actually, when they decided to leave the Union, the European Union. Anyways, that's besides the point. The main thing is that people are causing damage, which they think they are kind of being helpful in doing this by scaring people. But they don't realize that most of the immigrant population that's here legally, and most of it, they are, taxpayer. Like, for example, if I give you the simplest and the most appropriate example, that would be of the NHS, the National Health Service. We see whichever part of the country you go to, you find many different nationalities, doctors working, nurses working, or paramedics, all the different kind of NHS staff, they are working in the system. Mainly the doctors and nurses, they are mostly from the immigrant background, which just makes it more reasonable for people to be more grateful that there is a lot of population that's actually serving their people here. They have left their own countries not only for a better future, but also to serve. So at the end of the day, people are here to serve, and what they get back in as a result of it is that they get to live here and they get to survive here a bit better. Even if they have to help someone back in their own home countries, they can do that better because they earn, definitely they are earning better than a lot of people from their own background back in their own countries. So just labeling the whole immigrant population as the problem causing, I think it itself is quite a problematic kind of approach. And with looking at how the right wing usually takes things up and just makes a fuss of it, it doesn't really sound great. It just doesn't look right that they don't want to look back in the history if you talk about history, the most of them won't even know anything about the history because, funny enough, the Britain doesn't really teach them the history of British Raj, for example. What um, what the Great Britain has been doing to the world. No one talks about this because it doesn't serve the purpose. Because then it's kind of a shameful thing for them to know that it's, past is quite embarrassing. So I think the best thing that one can do is to read about what the past has been, even what the situation is in present. As I said, most of the people in this region, or those who have come from other parts of the world, you would find most of the population, if I may name a few countries, you would find that the easiest to find populations are Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis. Then from Africa you may find a lot of people from Nigeria, then South Africa. Even I have come across some people from Zimbabwe. Then you've got Caribbean people, as well as some people from other parts of the world. For example, Malaysia, Sri Lanka even. And yes, Hong Kong, which had been a colony till very recently. So what do people expect that all these places, the ones that I've named, I think almost all of these were ruled by the British, and they were not only ruled, but a lot of stuff was looted from there as well to make the British economy run smoother. So if one asks the far right to just read about these things and maybe talk a little bit about it, and to ask them how they feel about this whole scenario, most of them would just go quiet because they don't even know about this past of the Raj. Anyways, to cut the long story short, it's important for people to know that most of the areas are pretty safe, and there's no sort of a worry around what's gonna happen next, what's going on at the moment, because rule of law ultimately just takes its course and then ends up reaching all those causing mischief. Haven't lost any faith in the rule of law. So justice system, as long as that prevails, everything will be fine. Maybe for the next couple of weeks or so, you may find one or the other incident occurring, but if once someone gets, unfortunately, which is quite likely actually, if someone gets killed, then a lot of far-right people are going to feel the heat because their leadership is going to suffer the consequences of this whole situation, unfortunately. Which a lot of people don't really think much about. Although their main concern should have been that those boat crossings should be stopped, where a lot of people are, coming in the boats, and they are taking very, very risky kind of journey through the channel, which surely is a very, very risky thing. And because they think everything is just getting on the British public's nerves in that case, They would rather not have those people come here. The previous government, the Tory government, was arranging for them to be sent to Rwanda. Funny enough, that kid who killed the 3 young children was also son of Rwandan immigrants. So, I mean, that's not really related, in my opinion. I don't think that's related in any way. But the thing is, the government was spending millions and millions just to send only a few people. So it's very expensive to actually send people like that. One thing that I don't understand about the asylum system in this country is that whosoever seeks asylum here, they generally are not allowed to work, which is a very strange thing, because mostly when people take asylum, they are actually quite physically well enough people to be able to do any kind of jobs. A lot of them would be some high-skilled professionals. Like, for example, you may find someone who would be a dentist in their own country, which is war-torn, or something's going on, or some, running away from their countries due to some political situations. They still can function in this society, and they can actually be a part. They can be more of a giver rather than taker, because once you go on to the to do proper jobs, you pay back into the system by paying taxes. But I don't really understand with the asylum seeker process, or whatever it is. I have come across a lot of asylum seekers. I worked in a place where there were some asylum seekers around that area, and you could see that they were struggling from mental health perspective, because they had been through a lot over the last few years. But at the same time, they were still physically well enough to be able to do, even if they have to do some jobs like common labor jobs, even then they could be participating in the economy. But no, the system doesn't really allow them. Hello Milo, how are you? So system doesn't really allow them, which is really a strange thing, and which actually makes them more dependent on the system itself. And a lot of times, if that kind of dependence that happens, it's like they are left to just live on a minimum amount of money. So I get the feeling that we're kind of making more and more beggars in that case, because they can't work. The only thing probably they can do is either to receive that few pounds every week, I think 37.5 pounds a week, which is literally not even enough to have your regular meals over the week. But yes, that's what they live on, and then they stay in really poor looking places as well, not well maintained, and all that sort of stuff. So what's happening with the system overall then? That system is just paying for these people. You and I, who are the taxpayers generally, you can say that our tax money is somehow going towards welfare of these asylum seekers, a lot of whom can work really, really well, but they're not allowed. The system doesn't allow them to work legally. Illegally, you may still come to know that someone might be working at a takeaway, or, as I said, sometimes you may find people who have just got fed up with the system, and they came with the thought that they were going to have a better life, but they live for maybe more than a decade at a time to just not be able to function for this economy. So they can't make money for themselves. They can't make any money for the place they are living in, and they are just living on the money that government pays them, which sounds like it's just making more and more beggars, unfortunately. by BMW specialists. Looks like some good functioning place, very clean looking. So yeah, that was a little bit of, you can say, some moaning about how things have been and how they could be better. Maybe if they were integrated a bit better into the society, these asylum seekers could be an asset. I'm not saying that illegal immigrants should be just given all the rights, but at least this should be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I know someone who was a dentist. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of months ago. A very young lady, so I think 35, 36, and she had a, I think, brain hemorrhage. So she was, of course, there's always a lot of stress when you're not able to function well enough, when you're not really able to help your family back home as well. And she was on her own, and she died. We had just known her since 2015 when I lived on the Isle of Wight, and it was a very sad thing to see that she was actually a dentist by profession, but she was not allowed to do anything. That's what she had told us, that due to her status of being asylum seeker here, she could not sit any exams, she could not get into the system to be a more productive citizen of this place. So it's an unfortunate thing. There will always be examples of people who may come here and then cause a lot of problem as well. But as I said, this probably needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. At least the system could try and get the highly functioning population to work in the system, because this country has not been working really well when it comes to even the health service. Health service is so much broken at the moment that if you were to go for, let's give you a few examples. If you were to go for, if you are a person who has got some knee related problem and it has been going on for a few years, and now you're struggling to mobilize properly, you're struggling to function proper enough, you go see your doctor, and your doctor initially would, which you would already have used a lot of pain relief and some physiotherapy, etc., exercises, you would have done all that, and then your doctor thinks that it's appropriate for you to go see a specialist to maybe get onto the waiting list for a knee replacement surgery. And that itself, it's so funny that at the moment people have been waiting for years and years to get that surgery, so they are on the waiting list. But every year a lot of surgeries get cancelled only because when winter approaches, because this region generally has elderly population, so what they do is they get a lot more elderly people getting pneumonia or influenza in the winter months, so they get admitted to the hospital, and it comes to a point where even the surgical wards get filled up with medical patients, and this leads to further worsening of the surgical backlog. So surgeries don't happen, and if someone was meant to have a surgery, for example, in February of a year, just because every year everything goes back a few months due to the situation with needing more beds for elderly people who are unwell, it just keeps on getting delayed and delayed. So a surgery that's meant to happen in February of the next year, it may happen maybe a couple of Februaries later, which means a couple of years later. which is so unfair to the people. But then there are multiple reasons. This is one reason, that the older population is growing. Another reason is that you don't have enough staff around. So when you need people to work, you don't have enough people, because a lot of people don't feel appreciated for what they do in the system. So there's plenty and plenty. There's hundreds of thousands of hard-working people. They're working really hard in the whole setup. But they feel overwhelmed. They don't get enough support. And what it leads to is that people start leaving their jobs. Now, the jobs that they have trained for over a period of years, and then they have worked through the system, and they have, they may have done maybe a decade or at least a few years of work in the system, so they know the system inside out. But the problem is they can't help enough, because they need more people to be around so that everything can run smoothly. But unfortunately it doesn't happen, and ultimately people start leaving the system. A lot of our young doctors, for example, they have been I've been seeing that since year 2015, 16 onwards, that people left for places like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, even for some European countries, just because since UK decided to leave the European Union, people have decided to go back to the countries where they can still be the citizens of the Union rather than only the British citizens. So this has become really a tricky situation. We don't know how long NHS is going to be able to cope with this whole situation. But on top of all this, if we are seeing this new crisis where people's lives may not be safe enough due to some people not wanting immigrants around, it probably will lead to more and more chaos. And that chaos then means more chaos for the system itself. And if this system was to get privatized, most of these immigrants are likely to still be able to afford the kind of treatments that they need, but a lot of local population may not be able to survive the privatization of system. If that happens, then there will be even more chaos, because at the moment health service is free of charge. We see a lot of people who go see the doctors in their surgeries, and then you at the same time see that there are people who book appointments and then they don't really attend appointments. So there's a lot of lost appointments just to see your doctor or your nurse or any clinician. This just increases more and more pressure. Anyways, I'm almost done with my 5-mile jog and walk. Well, 2-mile jog and 3-mile walk. Probably not the best way to do it, but yeah, I like to go live when I approach the river, because it's just a nice view to show to people as well. Anyways, thank you so much for joining. I'll see you sometime later. Thank you. Bye bye.